Thanks, Skip. Thanks everybody for showing up this morning. Skip asked me to come and do this, and I kind of just said yes right away. Didn't even think about it. It's Skip. He's a great guy, and so it's just like, yeah, why not? What do you want me to talk about? Healthcare? Health insurance, dental, vision, disability? He's like, well, usually people just talk about, their struggles or, things that they've went through in life. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. I didn't know he was going to share some of that information, but I think when it comes down to it, I'm just a better salesperson. He's much smarter and detailed in everything than I am. But no, I appreciate the kind words, and I'm kind of just gonna go right into a lot of these things. But a lot of that I had to, go throughout, the years of life was just a constant evaluation of, who you spend your time with, friends, family, things like that. Mostly friends or who you thought were friends, and just doing that evaluation of, who brings value to your life and who's really bringing you down. And he's definitely one of those guys that you just want to attach yourself to. He says that he wants to be more like me, and I say I want to be more like him. So it definitely works. But, really what I wanted to share today, and really when he asked me to do this, like I said, I didn't really know what to talk about. But it was probably about a month ago. I was sitting in church, and he had a message about forgiveness, and that just kind of hit home to me, just hit really hard. You might be standing in church or, listen to your favorite, preacher or podcast or things like that, and maybe you've felt this way, but, you just feel this heaviness come on you because you can relate to it, or just something similar to you happened just based off of, maybe life experiences that they shared or something in the Bible, or the message that they're, trying to, translate to you. And that's really what happened to me. And I'm going to try and stick to the notes as much as possible. Otherwise, I'll go on a tangent like Skip here. But who doesn't like forgiveness? Whether it's something small or, something maybe major. Just forgiveness is great. It's such an amazing feeling, when you may have just wronged somebody, no matter, how big or small, and then they offered or extended that forgiveness to you. It's just a sign of relief, that they're just not going to write you off, or, we can't be friends anymore, or whatever it is. But we've all sinned against our God, and you may have done wrong things through life, and maybe felt like you deserved the wrath of God, but instead he extended grace and mercy, just like maybe a family or a friend. But then also you maybe want to think about, are you a good forgiver? Because maybe someone or something came to mind when I started talking about forgiveness, maybe something recently or something, in the past. And it maybe even you feel bothered by, forgiveness or something that has happened. But really when you embrace forgiveness, it can just give you a greater peace, not only with that particular person, but with God and just, everyday life. Often someone hurts me, or if someone, were to struggle, when someone hurts, or when you do wrong and someone's trying to, or someone's forgiving you, sometimes, you have that sign of relief, like I mentioned. But, if you have to do the forgiving of someone that wronged you, sometimes that's a little bit harder to do. Why'd you say that to me? Why'd you do that to me? Whether that's, friends, family, in the workplace, I'm going to find a new friend, or I'm going to find a new spouse, or I'm going to find a new job. Sometimes, our relationships are fragile. And sometimes, you may be asking, why God, why are you putting me in this place? so we can't have those types of fragile relationships when it comes to our faith. And I think the truth we need to understand here is, and what he talked about in this message, was the sovereignty of God. So what does that mean? That means God has the power and authority over all things. Not just some things, all things. He governs everything. And there was a passage that he shared, Proverbs 69, and it says, "The heart of the man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps." So if we understand the sovereignty of God and embrace it, it will give us a greater peace. You might have your own plan, for the next week. You might have your own plan for the next year or for the rest of your life, but guess what? God has his plan for you. So we'll get to the cherries now. So does anyone ever, feel like they've always had to maybe learn the hard way when it comes to, various things in life? And I feel like I've had a handful of those events. And you're just, stuck in a place after that. Something might have happened. You're just like, why, God? Why are you making me go through this? Or why is this happening to me? Type thing. Can things just go my way for once? And I think if we can all grasp the powerful, good, forgiving God, it can work wonders in our heart, our emotions, our life, and then you can be at peace. It just, increases our worship to God, and just having that trust in everything that he does. When someone really has wronged you, it's not just the forgiveness that you're extending to them. It's, the forgiveness of, our sovereignty God and what he's putting us through. And so he's the one that's really pulling the strings of life. And, my parents, they got together at a very young age, and they had my sister at, I think my mom was 18 and my dad would have been in his early 20s. And I don't think it was planned, but they really started to, get their responsibilities in check. And from what I've heard is, they stopped drinking. I think my dad might have had, a slight alcoholic problem, started going to church. And then, a couple years later, I came along. And so they were still, young and, navigating life and things like that. But what I remember at a young age was just, always going to church, whether that's once or twice a week. They had me in every Christmas play, even though how much I hated it. All the Kids with Christ, Wednesday night things, and learning Bible verses, and getting the little stars on your Bible verse sheet. Things like that. And, I would even on weekends, ask to stay at friends' houses. Like, that's fine, but, we're picking you up in the morning to go to church. And so, that's just what I remember, growing up. And, we would pray every night. And, unfortunately, my dad, he was type 1 diabetic. And so he was diagnosed with diabetes at a very young age. And it really started to wear on his eyesight. And so by I think his early 20s, he lost his license just because his eyesight was so bad. And he did multiple laser eye surgeries, and just nothing was ever helping. And so he really relied on my mom a lot to, take him places, and he owned his own business. So I really appreciated, his hard work. He really instilled that in me at a really young age, and I applaud him for everything that he did, with just considering his circumstances. He owned a construction business, and so, sometimes when I would tell people, and they're like, wait, your dad can't drive, like, how can he see? And it's just like, he was such a good teacher, and he just, he was a very strong guy, and he would just help out whenever he could, but he was always asking for help too, if there's something that he knew that he couldn't do. But I think it was pretty tough on him just having to rely on people at all times, whether that was his workers or my mom or, even us at some times. But again, I just really applaud him for, all the hard work that he did, because I got, every baseball glove that I needed. I got every pair of, football cleats that I needed. I knew that, he was going to work every day to work hard for us to make sure that we, were taken care of and cared for. And he was just a super great guy. And, one story that I was just kind of reminiscing on, I think even, one of his guys that he hired on lived just down the street, and it was at a low income house. And this is just, example of what type of guy he was. He ended up firing the guy for not showing up to work or something like that. The guy ended up coming to our house and stealing one of our bikes out of our garage. And it was like not even weeks after that, he rehired the guy back because he was begging for his job back. And it's just like, just the forgiveness that he extended to him and everything. But I just really applaud him for, the hard work that he instilled. As I started to, grow older, and I was still very active in sports and things like that, basketball, football, baseball, everything really. I excelled pretty well, and I was very grateful for that. And you always want that. I hear other parents do, and what my parents did to me was, always stay humble. And one thing that they always, said to me was, as quickly as God gave you those gifts, He can take them away. And so, freshman year of football, I got called up to play as a sophomore, and super grateful for that opportunity. I was the starting running back for Marion. We won a ton of games, went undefeated, had a great experience. And then even by the end of that freshman season, got called up to play varsity for our playoff games. So I was, one of the two starting running backs. So I was just very blessed to have that opportunity. And then getting to my sophomore year, I was the starting running back for varsity. Got called up once again. And so I was playing at a high level. I was hanging out with the older guys, like what could be better. But that's when, some of the peer pressures of life started to come, and some things started to take a turn with alcohol and drugs and things like that. And just really started to take over. It really wasn't much longer after that. My mom pulled me aside and told me that she loved my dad very dearly, but they were going to be separating. I never felt that sort of like brokenness in my household, just that stability that you have, with your family, going to church and praying and every night, and then just having that taken from you. You mix all that in with the alcohol and the drugs, it was just a downhill spiral. Fast forward for the next 2 to 3 years, I was getting into my senior year of high school. I was suspended twice. Twice for alcohol, once for fighting, another time for theft. my football coach and my teammates, my family. Even though that they weren't, acting a certain way towards me, they were still there to extend that forgiveness on multiple occasions. No matter how much I let them down, the team down, family, friends. I'll never forget just being in the office at high school, sitting there with our superintendent, my football coach, our administrator, and my football coach just holding on to me that day. After I'm being told that if I screw up one more time, I'll never play sports again. And he could have just, cussed me out or not even shown up or walked out, but instead he just grabbed onto me and said, "We'll get through this." I believe I wanted to turn things around and make better choices, but I didn't. After my parents splitting and selling the house that we lived in my entire life, I was stuck in a position where, as a senior in high school, I was living alone in a townhouse because my dad had to be closer to work. I hated my mom for what she did. I don't fault my dad whatsoever. I knew he was going through a lot of pain, even though he was trying to do his best to take care of me. But I knew that he was going through a lot himself. It just really wasn't a great time for me. Being a senior in high school, living alone, and you go home. Normally you'd have your parents asking you, how was your day? Sit at the dinner table. And I don't think at the time I knew how much it was affecting me as a person. I knew after some time I hated just being alone. Not anybody to talk to, because then you just get sit. I'm sure you may have felt this, just being in a room or being stuck in your thoughts and trying to handle, life's ups and downs yourself doesn't usually work out too well. So I was spending a lot of time actually with one of my best friends, just trying to, distract yourselves is what you'd probably say, and, spend time at their house or whatever. I think his parents, started to pick up on it pretty quickly, and I'm forever grateful for them, but they asked to, stay at their house full time after, staying on their couch for so long and eating all their food. Wonderful people, and I'm forever, again, grateful for God putting them in my life. They really helped me try and get as much on the right path as possible. They even, helped me file my FAFSA for college, took me on college visits to football camps. My buddy and I even had our graduation party together. I ended up finishing my senior football season, breaking the career rushing record, most touchdowns in a game, and then the season rushing records. And my desire at that time was just really to go on and play football in college. After some time, a lot of time, my mom was just constantly trying to, rekindle our relationship and be there for me. And I'm just a very anti-confrontational person. I'm very forgiving myself, but it took a lot. But just trying to extend that sort of forgiveness to her was very tough for me. Just knowing how great of a guy my dad was and just thinking like, why? But it was just such a relief to be able to, after some time, extend that sort of forgiveness, just like people extended that forgiveness to me, just like my football coach, my family, my teammates, my friends. It just makes you feel so much better. And obviously it makes me feel better now that I can actually speak about it. But I made it to college. And unfortunately, just with college and everything, I started to go down a similar path, and I ended up getting myself into an OWI my freshman year, and I found myself in the pit that maybe some of you have experienced before, trying to ask for forgiveness to, again, families, friends, teammates. I think I really, at the time, believed that I wanted things to get better, throughout college and things like that, but they just really didn't. And until I actually met a girl and we started dating in college, we kindled a very strong relationship, and with her family too. And it was kind of all over again, just like my buddy Addison and his family. They kind of took me under their wing. And started to feel that sense of, family and just stability, because I would, go to dinners with them, spend time with them, go on vacations. And so again, I just felt like I was part of the family. And after, we both graduated, we got jobs, and we just continued to building on our relationship. And, we were still, young at the time, but, we talked about, being together forever and things like that. But I got in a situation where I was out of town and on a bachelor party and woke up to about 20 missed calls and a bunch of messages. And the first message I ended up reading was a woman sending me a message saying that my girlfriend was sleeping with her husband. And so again, I found myself down in a pit just asking God, why are you making me go through this? I felt hurt, broken. I didn't know what to do. But instead of, resorting to the drugs and alcohol this time around, I really had my desire to strengthen my relationship with God. And I think that was just really one of the things that helped my mom and I re-strengthen our relationship, because we started to go to church together. And so, again, until this day, 3 or 4 years later, we still are going to church together every Sunday. Just like I remember, growing up as a kid going to church. I didn't really date much after that happening. I lost a lot of trust in just relationships. But after some time and, some healing, I did meet a super nice girl, and we ended up, trading off, going to each other's churches and, building our relationship together. But I just felt this barricade, this block that I wasn't just able to, progress through this relationship. And I think I still had some hurt inside of just like so many years of hurt and, trying to handle things myself, with seeing my dad go through what he was going through. He was just the type of guy that always just kept things in, and I think in some sense I kind of felt the same way. It's just like, I'm going to keep it in, I'm not going to talk about it, just push it down as much as possible, don't address it, but there were some certain events where it just builds up, and then it just releases. And fortunately, but unfortunately, this particular woman that I was seeing, her emotional intelligence was very high. So just one day she grabbed my hands and she's like, if you're not going to talk to me about this stuff, you need to talk to somebody else. And that was just kind of like a news flash for me, or a turning point. I'm just like, maybe I do need to, go see, someone at church, or a mental health provider, or therapist, whatever. And after, some time of just realizing, what I'm doing just isn't working. This is, holding me back in relationships, life, whatever. So I ended up reaching out to a gal that worked for a company called Keys to Living. They're faith-based therapist program, and so I didn't really know what to expect. I think there's that stigma with men anyways, and mental health and sharing their feelings and vulnerability and things like that. And it's just like, kind of going on a first date, you don't know what to say or what to do, but somehow these therapists, they always just know like just how to dig right in right away. And so I shared, a lot of the information like I'm sharing with you today, and I don't share with a lot of people. But it was a very similar result, just a lot of tears. And after I stopped to take a breather, she goes, "Colton, I know exactly who you are, and I've heard so much about you. You may not know this, but your parents did some counseling through me because they wanted to try and make their relationship work for you and your sister. And I wanted to let you know that they love you dearly." And then she prayed with me. I just thought, well, like people say, God works in mysterious ways, and how I got connected with her. But I'm just gonna leave you with a couple things here. You may not realize it when you're in the pit, but there's always a bigger plan that God has for you. When you're in the pit, all you can see are the walls around you. But what if you could just zoom out, see into the future, and what kind of good could come from it? If we don't have a small God that reacts to decisions or calls audibles, we've got Super Bowl this weekend. It's not like I made these decisions and then God was like, "Oh, Colton, did this, now I need to do this." He's got his plan already laid out for you. We have a big God with big plans for each and every one of us. My sins were great, but our God is greater. There can be a purpose in your pain. We just have to trust and believe in our sovereign God. When we know God's character, it's comforting, even when things are a mess. God sent his son to be a servant and suffer for our benefit. How great is that? How worthy and trusting is our God. All the time, not just some of the time, all the time. Thanks, everybody.